chyba sobie tego nie przeczytamy.
My father made him come, of course, but Gus stood far apart, just flew his kite and bottled up the storm inside his heart. I tried to talk him out of it, but though he'd never met her, we don't need a stepmom were the words that
I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride.
When the time for photos came, Dad ordered him to come here. But Gus declined, and as a sign held up his middle finger. The wind picked up, and panicked geese appeared and quickly went. But all the humans did that day was go inside the tent. Rain came down in buckets then, but no one seemed afraid that nature might destroy the tent our dad had crudely made. The thunder sounded much too close and full of angry power, but all my father said to this was, "Make the music louder."
Taki debil, no.
I wish that I could truly say I thought about you on that day. Out there on the beach alone, just you, the wind, the sea, and foam.
Whoa.
But I didn't, until we found you.
She never talked about him, but Mom told me once if I was a boy, they were going to name me Gus. My mom moved up to the loft after her brothers died. At the time, it was as far away as she could get. Religion was another thing my mom never talked about, but I think it helped her a lot after her dad died. She spent a summer building houses in Calcutta, where she met my dad, Sanjay.
My mom moved to India a week after graduation and got a job teaching English. Louis was born a year later.
When my dad died, I don't think Mom knew where else to go. I'm sure Edie was happy to have her back. And to see kids in the house again. The house had to get a little bigger, but Edie was used to that. And for a while, things were good. Almost normal.
Pan musi grać tą muzyczkę, nie?
But it didn't last. The beginning of the end was Milton's 10th birthday, when Edie gave him a castle. After Milton disappeared, the only thing he left behind was a room full of paintings.
I think Edie was happy to finally have another painter in the family. Milton Finch in The Magic Paintbrush.
before when Milton disappeared. Mom spent months searching for my brother. Then she sealed the doors.
Ale co ja z tym faktem mogę zrobić?
Whatever Milton had found in the house, Mom didn't want it getting out. Mom definitely blamed Edie, but I think Lewis blamed himself. After he graduated, he just spent more and more time in his room. Until Mom got him a job at the cannery.
O, bo to jest moja ulubiona część. Bardziej taka totalnie chora, ale wow, on jest. Szczerze.
Everyone always told me to stay out of Lewis's room. Except Lewis. Lewis's room smelled very, very familiar. That part of him lived on.
Jarał jak szalik. Nie, co ty robisz, idiotko? No, teraz będę musiała kolejny się mnie tam wchodzić.
Lewis and I spent a lot of time playing games together, but he was surprisingly bad at them. He died a lot.
Na czym on kurwa grał? Aha, dobra, bo szukam tego, ale widzę, że jest.
Dear Mrs. Finch, as Lewis's psychiatrist, I can understand your desire for an explanation. As I see it, the trouble began in January, shortly after we convinced your son to seek treatment for substance abuse. Newly sober, I believe Lewis first noticed the monotony of his daily life. He kept working at the cannery, but he withdrew part of himself. In our sessions, I saw the same behavior. His mind began to wander. I asked him to describe it. He said he started small, imagining a labyrinth. He'd feel his way about. Then something moved. Bats. And toads. And things that have not names. He knew it was all in his head. But he took it very seriously. I had hoped he'd find himself. But he found something more. I worried about him then. Daydreaming at the cannery. I spoke with his boss. But he said Lewis had become a model employee. Methodical, tireless, focused. Like a whole new Lewis. So I let him go on. I even encouraged him. It seemed very promising at first. He told me he'd made a new friend. On the edge of a city he named Lewis Topia. He built the city up slowly, brick by brick. Then he made musicians. And songs for them to play. He talked about starting a band. And he was always humming something. Every day his imagination grew stronger. He no longer spoke at the cannery. But his chopping was as reliable as ever. Then one day it struck him that all the cheering crowds, even the stones under his feet, were all in his imagination. So he could do whatever he wished. He held an election for mayor. And he won. They begged him to stay, but his mind was already wandering. It became a game for him. He'd conquer a city, then immediately push on. New Louisville. St. Louis. He started drifting away from our reality. Minneapolis, until one day he forgot to go home from the cannery. Even as his mother pleaded with him, part of Lewis kept sailing on. In Lewisburg, he heard rumors of a handsome queen. The queen was on her own quest for radiant rainbows. He followed the sound of her electric sitar. Led him to a golden palace east of the sun and west of the moon. Even then, his logic remained sound. He knew the world was all in his imagination. he was so proud of having created it. In his own eyes, he'd become something greater than a king. For someone who'd never known success in the real world, I think it was overwhelming. And then it struck him that the real Lewis was not the one chopping salmon, but the one climbing the steps of a golden palace. My imagination is as real as my body, he told me. It was hard to argue with him. Began to forget the world we know. I think it pained him to remember Lewis, the cannery worker. He began to despise the man with a royal contempt. I still thought I could save him. Even after he said he was being crowned king over all the lands of wonder. The palace would be packed with his companions. Including the wise Calico who'd insisted on inviting me. His queen waited, holding his crown. There was only one thing left to do. Bend down his head. I think you know. Mrs. Finch, your son was a kind man who will be missed by all of us who knew him.
My brother was really cool. I wish you could have met him. On the way back from Lewis's funeral, my mom told me to start packing. She waited until the day before we left to tell Edie. I'm not sure if she wanted to make it easier or harder. I wish we'd stayed. But I understand why we left. What happened that night had been coming for a long time. Maybe it should have come sooner. But it had to end one way or another. All that's left now is to tell you about that last night. That whole last day, Edie just watched us pack and didn't say a word. Until supper, when she raised her glass and said,
"To our final night together, and all our final nights apart."
Grandma, you know what I said about alcohol. Some of your medications are very
Edith,
specific.
I left a present for you in the hallway. Why don't you go open it? The grown-ups have to argue now.
I'm sorry, you're right. We're all leaving tomorrow. Let's just enjoy our last...
I'm not leaving.
Edith, you're excused.
the power had been shut off that morning, but Edie always had plenty of candles. When my mom sealed the library, I don't think she knew about the other entrance. Or that Edie had a key to it.
That thing you're afraid of isn't going to end when you leave the house. Edith has a right to know these stories.
My children are dead because of your stories. I think it's best if Edith and I leave tonight. We'll have the nursing home send a van for you in the morning, okay?
Dear Edith, there's so many stories I wish I could tell you, but there's only time for one. This is about what happened on the night you were born. That night, the tide went way, way out. It was the first and last time I ever saw the old house aground. There'd been an earthquake out in the middle of the ocean. They called it the lowest tide in 1,000 years. God, it smelled awful. You know, I've seen that house every day of my life. But I never thought I'd go back to it. When the fog rolled in, I lost my way. I got turned around. For a while, I wandered. I started seeing things. Things I'd forgotten had ever existed. But when I saw them, they felt like old friends. That night, a lot of things came back to me. Or maybe I came back to them. Things I can't explain, but that I need you to try and...
Edith, what are you doing in here?
It's mine.
Edith!
Mom, you're gonna rip it! Let go! I kicked and screamed, but Mom dragged me to the car. I never saw Great-Grandma Edie again. The next morning, the van came to pick her up, but she was already gone. After that, we moved around a lot. We both tried to make the best of it. A few years went by. My mom didn't like to talk about it. But she started getting sick a lot. The rest happened pretty quickly. She got better for a while, and then she didn't. And then I was alone. The last Finch left alive. Until I found out about you. I'm still not sure what to tell you about all this. If we lived forever, maybe we'd have time to understand things. But as it is, I think the best we can do is try to open our eyes. And appreciate how strange and brief all of this is. This journal was supposed to be for you. But now I hope you'll never see it. I just want to meet you. And tell you all these stories myself. But I guess if you're reading this now, things didn't work out that way. This is where your story begins. I'm sorry I won't be there to see it. It's a lot to ask, but I don't want you to be sad that I'm gone. I want you to be amazed that any of us ever had a chance to be here at all. Good luck.
No Boże, Krasnodębski. Nie mam od Dina. Totalnie nie wiem, gdzie to mogło być. To jest tu, nie? Ale ja totalnie nie wiedziałam, co z nim zrobić.
Her room was like a museum.
No właśnie.
For 500 years, the Finches have been famous throughout Norway for their fortune. And misfortune.
Nie wiem, co z tym zrobić po prostu. Ej. Kurwa. Dawaj to. Znaczy nie wiem, że po prostu mam zepsutego pada, więc wait a minutę. Kurwa, włącz urządzenie. Okej, mam innego pada.
Odin
No
Finch
właśnie.
buries the latest victims of the family curse. His wife Ingeborg and their newborn son, Johan. On January 7th, 1937, he set sail with his family and his house, hoping to leave the curse behind. But 40-foot waves off the coast of Washington send the house and Odin to the bottom of the sea. Odin's daughter Edie, with husband Sven and baby Molly, step ashore on their new home, Orcas Island. Odin Finch is the first to be buried in the new family cemetery. His daughter Edie is already dreaming of a new Finch house.
Co?
Whatever's wrong with this family, it goes back a long ways.
No. Ale w sensie. Nawet nic.
Z kimś masz teraz?
Nie.
Chcesz o czymś pogadać?
Nie.
Ale jak się zaraz zawołam, to przyjdź, nie tak wziąć, dobra?
Ok.
Żeby nie stykło. Szkoda włosy.
Nie dziwię się. się, że jest takie osiągnięcie, żeby rozegrać jego historię od początku, jak ona jest tak zajebista, totalnie. Nawet nie wiecie, ile z tego jest tych sad TikToków, nie?
I knew Grandpa Sam had a twin. And that he never talked about him. I guess my grandpa didn't like history any more than my mom did.
How I Want to Remember My Brother by Sam Finch. The thing I remember is that when he made up his mind, that was it. My brother said he'd die before he ate another mushroom. And he did. At Barbara's funeral, we swore he'd never be afraid again. And he wasn't. I think Calvin always wanted to fly.
Sam! Calvin! Dinner's ready! Coming!
But that day, he finally made up his mind to do it. I told him going around was impossible. Maybe if I hadn't said that.
Calvin! I'm not gonna tell you again!
Maybe if the wind hadn't picked up. Then maybe he'd still be here. But I doubt it. I think he'd already made up his mind. That's what I want to remember about my brother. The day he made up his mind to fly. And he did.
Calvin's story felt strangely familiar. When I was younger, I remember trying to do the exact same thing. After the funeral, Edie roped off Calvin's half of the room.
Teraz słuchaj, co tutaj jeszcze trzeba usunąć wszystkie białe. Ok. Wow, ktoś dołączył, ale jestem zajebista. Jak to Sandra, to pozdrawiam.
Growing up, I always thought of Barbara as a child star. Of all the stories people wrote about Barbara's death, I'm surprised Edie saved this one.
Old Jack here with another ghastly tale inspired by America's most unfortunate family. I'm calling it The Surprise Ending of Barbara Finch. As a child star, Barbara was famous for her scream. Now at 16, she was all washed up. A has-been. But in a lucky break, she'd been asked to perform her signature scream at a local convention for monster movie fans. It was just the boost her career needed. Unfortunately, her scream hadn't aged well.
Getting better. I think you just need the right motivation.
Her biggest fan and current boyfriend, Rick, was about to demonstrate when...
Now that was a great scream.
It was Barbara's father, Sven. He'd slipped into a table saw and had to be rushed to the emergency room. So Barbara got stuck babysitting her youngest brother, Walter. Her convention comeback was cancelled.
Okay, I'm hearing frustration, but I'm not hearing terror. What if I tried...
A gang of hoodlums in Halloween masks have been terrorizing Orcas Island tonight. Police are urging residents to...
That came from the basement.
You're right! Also, I loved your delivery on that. Why is your basement door locked?
Because my dad likes making puzzles and secret passages. There's a key hidden in the music box. The secret is to keep winding and winding until finally the key pops out.
Thanks, babe. I'll be back in a sec.
20 minutes later, Rick hadn't returned. So Barbara went to look for him, right on cue. She reached for the music box.
Oh.
And as she wound the key, she listened for Rick, but the house was silent. She found Rick's crutch and imagined the worst.
The gang's leader is the infamous...
To ta latało, nie? Może.
December 13th, 1947. Dear Diary, I'll be gone soon, but I wanted to tell somebody about what's gonna happen. It started when Mom sent me to bed without dinner. I woke up and I was starving, so I looked around for something to eat. The gerbil food was dry, but I didn't mind it.
A jedzenie mięso uważa żarcie jego. Ja myślałam, że żarcie jego, że jako... Dobra, nie było tematu.
I ate a lot of things that night. My Halloween candy was all gone. Mom, can I come out now?
Sweetheart, it's late. Go to sleep.
Then I heard chirping outside my window. It was a barn swallow going back to her nest. I reached out for her. And suddenly, I was a cat.
Dawaj mi żarcie.
I tried to be quiet, but the bird was really scared. I jumped and I almost got her. Now I was up in the big tree. I promised Dad I wouldn't climb it anymore. All I cared about gobbled her up. And suddenly, I was an owl. First, all I heard was the wind. Then I heard little teeth nibbling in the grass.
To będzie najtrudniejsze. Co to jest? Co? Ta, za brąz śmieszny.
Rabbits. Up and seen mine through my talons. I swallowed him up, and I didn't chew one bit. Then I flew off to find something bigger. A mama rabbit. She was almost too big to carry. I started choking, but I couldn't stop eating. Suddenly, I was a shark.
Czemu nie dostałam osiągnięcia? No jakie gówno. Są 2 króliki w zaledwie 2 podejściach. No to złapałam, o co ci chodzi.
December 13th, 1947. Dear Diary, I'll be gone soon, but I wanted to tell somebody about what's gonna happen. It started when Mom sent me to bed without dinner. I woke up and I was starving, so I looked around for something to eat. The gerbil food was dry, but I didn't mind it. Mom, can I come out now?
Sweetheart, it's late. Go to sleep.
I ate a lot of things that night. My Halloween candy was all gone. Then I heard chirping outside my window. It was a barn swallow going back to her nest. I reached out for her. And suddenly,
I'm
I was a cat.
Wow, zajebiście.
I tried to be quiet, but the bird was really scared. Mom and Dad didn't
Tak,
even
to już
look at
wiemy,
me.
miejcie w dupie. Spoko, oni też wszyscy w dupie mają.
I jumped and I almost got her. Now I was up in the big tree. I promised Dad I wouldn't climb it anymore. All I cared about was eating that mom. I gobbled her up. And suddenly, I was an owl. First, all I heard was the wind. Then I heard little teeth nibbling in the grass. Rabbits.
Ja pierdolę, jakie gówno. No nie chcę mi się w to grać. Chciałam coś mieć złote. Już mi się nie chce, no. Dobra,
December 13th, 1947. Dear Diary, I'll be gone soon, but I wanted to tell somebody about what's gonna happen. It started when Mom sent me to bed without dinner. I woke up and I was starving, so I looked around for something to eat. The gerbil food was dry, but I didn't mind it.
Co to jest?
My Halloween candy was all gone.
To jest Did Pop. Jakoś nie kojarzę, ale umarł.
Mom, can I come out now?
Sweetheart, it's late. Go to sleep.
I ate a lot of things that night.
Zaraz!
Then I heard chirping outside my window. It was a barn swallow going back to her nest. I reached out for her.
Co on ma z mordą?
And suddenly, I was a cat. I tried to be quiet, but the bird was really scared.
Ale że ja takim jumperem jestem?
I jumped and I almost got her.
O, no to niezłe bugi już są.
Now I was up in the big tree. I promised Dad I wouldn't climb it anymore. All I cared about was eating that mama bird. I gobbled her up. And suddenly, I was an owl. First, all I heard was the wind. Then I heard little teeth nibbling in the grass.
Za chwilę!
Rabbits. I imagined his face looking up and seeing mine through my talons. I swallowed him up, and I didn't chew one bit. Then I flew off.
Dobra, zajebiście. Zaraz przyjdę.
Grabbed on tight. When I was so hungry, I jumped out of the water. When I opened my eyes, everything had changed. Now I was a monster, and I smelled people everywhere.
No już mama idę.
I was big, but I moved real wild. I wanted to stop, but also I didn't. Passenger, I was still hungry. And across the water, I smelled something new. Something I had to have, so I swam towards it. I slithered onto the sand, and the good smell went into an old pipe.
Co ty robisz? Hashtag grawitacja.
I got closer and closer. All my stomach started growling. And suddenly, I was me again. I held my breath for a long time, but I couldn't hear anything. I think it's waiting for me to fall asleep. But it's not going to wait much longer. It needs to feed, and we both know I will be delicious.
Zajebiście. Przynajmniej głodna nie była.
I'm not sure if I believed all of that, but I'm sure Edie would have.
Dobra, to Ja idę tam... No! Kraken. Idę tam płakać sobie, nie wiem. Krzyczeć, użalać się nad sobą. No. Ogólnie mieć myśli samobójcze, więc... No, papa. Jakby ja idę jeść po prostu.